Welcome to the Connected Campus Podcast, where we explore the ways that diverse professionals are working every day to optimize their efforts to recruit, retain, and graduate their students.
We are here with a very special episode, talking with one of our contacts and the folks that we're working closely with on an exciting new project. The variety of organizations coming together for HBCUv, and we're going to kind of delve into a little bit more of what that entails. Recently announced, and we're really excited to be a part of it. So we just kind of wanted to take an episode here, the podcast, to dig in with it a little bit. But we will start as we always do. Valora, if you want to briefly introduce yourself and your professional background, and then we'll get into everything else we want to cover.
Hey, sure. Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Valora Richardson, and I work for the United Negro College Fund in the Institute for Capacity Building as the Director of Digital Solutions and Innovation. I have about 20 or more years of experience in higher ed academic technology, as well as in instructional technology. Also, working on a master's in information technology with a concentration on data analytics and intelligent systems. And so I've been in the field a very long time, and I've also worked in higher ed for most of that time. And so I'm excited to be in this place where I am today and to be working on this very important project.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible project, and even just with sort of your background, where you've worked in higher ed for many years, and a lot of it been different sort of digital roles, and you have just sort of the
Yes.
pedigree of your education and all that. Like, it's and we'll dive deeper into this new initiative. But what I really liked about it is that I feel like, one, obviously, like, it has this sort of perspective or sort of scale of nationwide and sort of just a large scope, and then it's also kind of it's including the academic side, the kind of student life side, and just like it's
Yes.
so comprehensive and everything. So and obviously, yeah, it's just due in part to obviously all the different things that you've worked on and your education background and all that good stuff. But just in case folks aren't kind of intimately aware of UNCF, if you want to just talk a little bit more about that organization and your role there, because I know it is just sort of a very unique, sort of role that you fit into this whole greater organization.
Sure. UNCF is the nation's largest and most effective minority education organization. Most of the people know as UNCF as being a vehicle for scholarships for our students. But in 2006, our leader, Dr. Michael Lomax, started what's called the Institute for Capacity Building. And so we provide a lot of subject matter expertise and support and technical assistance to the 37 organizations or 37 universities that are part of our organization. And so from that, we have several verticals within the Institute for Capacity Building. And one of those is the Digital Solutions and Innovation. And that's where this work falls under. Like I said before, it's such an honor and a privilege to be working, bringing my skills and my knowledge to impact the university, the colleges and universities at UNCF that are part of UNCF and beyond. And as we begin to talk about HBCUv, I can talk a little bit more about what that vision is.
And I guess it's like a brief follow-up. I guess I'm even curious, just like the nature of sort of to kind of segue to HBCUv, like, you came in, it's been, as of the recording of this episode, like almost 2 years. And I'm curious, like,
Mhm.
how much of sort of the vision for like the Institute and, kind of specifically like the work that you were doing, like how much that was sort of prescribed, or how much you sort of were kind of bringing in, again, like all of your expertise, all of your experience and education and everything. Like, was it sort of a blend, or was there like a pretty clear, sort of, idea or blueprint that they kind of had for sort of what you were doing?
Well, this I don't know. I think it's maybe just a little bit of both. Um, this was an entirely new position when I started a year and a half ago. And so and as I begin in this work, I would like to think that there is a blueprint. I really wish there was one, but it isn't. It's so organic, the work that we're doing, because we are really listening to our institutions about what they need. So we didn't want to come in with a prescribed note. Now we have an idea of what we need. We do have an idea base, right? But we still are flexible and pliable to make sure it meets the needs of our constituents. Does that answer your question? I know that was, it's
Yeah,
just
because I think that's like,
organic.
yeah, because I think that's what the interesting thing is like, you know, and just when you kind of talk about this sort of stuff, it's like that's kind of the trouble of like blazing a trail a bit, where there's just like there's nothing like this, but it is like such an incredible initiative and everything, is that there's like sort of that like vision statement or mission state, like kind of what you're aiming for, but the
Yes,
path there, it's just like, yeah, we gotta like get to work and start building it, and yeah, taking in that input and getting the feedback and collaborating with folks. So it's like, yeah, like there's not just gonna be like, nope, you just gotta do like these things and then you're good and then it's done and whatever.
right.
Like you do kind of like making the blueprint is part of kind of
Mhm.
the effort and everything. So yeah, I mean the work, this big project that is something that Pathify is working with you all and a bunch of other
Yes.
organizations are all kind of coming together and putting their heads together for this. So you know starting super high level, then we'll get a little bit more specific, but what is HBCUV?
Great question. It's one of my favorite questions. Um, HBCUV is a learning technology ecosystem that seeks to reimagine the HBCU experience in a virtual environment. We realize that our institutions make what we call an outsized impact, right? Based on their relative size and the resources that they offer. They make an impact on Black economic mobility. And we realize, and I'm sure you'll probably ask about this later, or let me just go ahead and talk about it, okay, if you don't mind. We realized that right after COVID hit, that only 20% of our HBCUs had an online program compared to 54% of our counterparts. So we had to do something, right? And that something is HBCUV. There have been many attempts before, and there are some course sharing initiatives that are out there now, but this one is distinctly different, as you've alluded to before, in that it seeks to not only provide top quality education to our institutions, but also it seeks to really emphasize that community engagement aspect that we believe is essential for support and college success.
Yeah, and I just always love these sort of like network approaches where it's like we can all
Right.
sort of like reach higher levels of success together, and that like you said, prior to it, it would have been happening, and and sometimes there can be a lot of success depending on sort of how I guess it all kind of shakes out, but like it was happening from the bottom up, and I think it's almost like recognizing that there obviously was work being done before, but then like in addition to that, how kind of from the top down, where it's like you have this obviously like all the member institutions that you work with, and you can sort of leverage your resources or
Right.
your team in addition to their like yeah, I'm always just like really excited to see these sort of things come together and just the very holistic nature of it. And I think my background, like I've worked a lot in digital education and feeling like you know it is a really important piece of the puzzle, and at least like recognizing that there was sort of that like kind of disequilibrium between your institutions and your counterparts and everything, and that like there's obviously always going to be a huge value and importance to like the on ground experience, where these students are studying, but then if it's just like, yeah, that's awesome, and we can make it even greater by
Yeah.
leveraging a platform like this to bring greater community, bring greater course options and just other learning opportunities and stuff. So and I guess yeah, just to kind of get to this kind of core question too, because I feel like this is so much for just sort of you know uh where the conversation I guess will sit with, but like the inspiration for it, like one of which being the digital education piece of kind of getting more on par. Were there other sort of pieces of inspiration that were sort of feeding this, maybe on like sort of the community piece? Because I guess that's the idea,
Oh,
again, if it was
sure.
sort of happening in pockets, and if we could
Yeah.
try to amplify that even further.
Well, you know what? You know, UNCF is not an institution. It's not a degree granting institution, right? But we support them. And we thought that even, when we had this idea, we knew that we could not do it alone and that we needed to do it in partnership with the institutions. And that's what really makes me excited about the platform, right? Because in all of the educational technology that I've worked with over my years, usually a product is created. And then, if it fits your community, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too. We just, basically, you know, the goals have been different, right? But this one is what, like I said before, it's so amazing that we're working with our institutions to define what it is. Before we engage with Pathify or any of our other partners, we sat down with our institutions and asked them what do they want. We had 3,300 hours of insights, time we spent on the institutions, on the campuses, doing surveys, focus group, co-creation labs, just to really get at what do you want. And from that, we came up with some defining characteristics of the platform, and that has led us in vendor selection, um, and other partnerships. And we meet weekly with our institutional partners to really make sure that we are true to what we've said we're going to be. And right now, we have 9 pilot institutions um, that are working with us. And, they're going to be ready for us, when it's time for us to launch next year.
Yeah, that's what's so great about this is that, you know, if you can kind of thread that through that perfect balance of like getting all that input, bringing that to a
Mhm.
partner, and then like if they can kind of customize to meet that and then keep that sort of as like an iterative process versus like I'm sure just if other folks that are listening to this and be like, oh yeah, we tried to do something like this with maybe, if it's just
Right.
like a regional thing or like neighboring institutions where it's just like they kind of take something out of a box and be like, who wants this? Like we got
Yes,
this
exactly.
at a discount or something, and then like
Right.
some people bite on it, and that's great. But or almost like this is like kind of the tragedy, I guess, of the idea of like almost being like too deferential and too collegial or something where it's just like,
Yeah.
we've been talking about this for years. We've been wanting to do this. I don't know. We keep coming up with ideas. It's like, well, we should start to build something. And that idea of what you're doing, where it's like, if you kind of keep checking over your shoulder and it's like, we're kind
Yeah.
of building something. We've got some people who are willing to pilot. And it's kind of like, is this kind of what you were thinking? Like, oh no, a little bit more of this, a little less of that. And
Mhm.
like, you can kind of get it to a point, and then like, even through the pilot, is even just a continual sort of development process where it's like, okay, we got this at least to kind of version 1.0. We're going to put it into practice. And then as that's sort of existing, you can kind of get that to a point where it's like, okay, I think we've really blended both sides of that equation of like something that is built that works well but works well with what we want, like that kind of harmony is really really great to see kind of play out. And it does take, to give you and your team kudos, like it does
Yes,
take like a lot of labor and effort and just sort of
it
commitment and
does.
follow through and everything. So that is great, just like knowing again sort of the goals and the vision and being really driven towards that to kind of just keep kind of muscling through the process of making it as good as it can be and aligning with everybody's sort of preferences, and still within sort of the bounds of the sandbox of just sort of like, okay, this is sort of what this is, but there can just be so much potential when you have really good collaborators, who
Yes,
are working together in that process. Yeah.
absolutely.
And so I guess to make it, I guess, really clear, because I know it's, yeah, I guess approaching like the next thing would be kind of the pilot process and everything, and then more, fuller launch in the future. Just to make it very clear, I guess, like, what are the goals for this initiative? So, like, it's say it's at all, the participating institutions and everything. Like, what do you hope happens? Like, what's the outcome? What's the impact that you would hope to see?
So, I think what I so those are okay. We might have to edit this part out. Let me think just a second. Um, the goal. Excuse me. Well, the goal of we've been okay. We have. I'll start. I'll repeat the question. So,
Yep, totally fine. Totally fine.
all right. So the goals of HBCUV are varied, right? It really depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about our reach to institutions, we do hope that it'll reach all HBCUs and even predominantly white institutions that have students on their campus that really miss that HBCU experience. And I see value in that. I didn't go to a HBCU. I went to predominantly white institution, both for my undergraduate degrees, my master, of all my degrees, even my doctorate. It wasn't until I was in my PhD program that I had an African American professor, and she was female, and being in that class really changed the course of my work, right, and what I do, and I attribute that single event and me being in her class as the reason why I'm here in this position where I am today. And when I think about what that benefit has been to me, being able to have a platform that some other students can have access to, even though they might go to a predominantly white institution or another institution, is phenomenal. So that's one goal. Another goal is to really amplify the intellectual wisdom that is found in our HBCUs, right? We have amazing faculty, amazing luminaries that are there and have things to share. And so we want to make sure that this platform gives them that opportunity to collaborate and work together. And then also, too, one of the things that is important to me as a technologist and working in the technology field is making sure that our institutions have access to cutting edge technology, the best of the best, because we deserve that. And I've worked at a heavily resourced institution. I mean, no expenses were spared to making sure that the online program had the resources, had all the technology, the integrations. There was no expense spared. But when I went to another institution and I worked there, I realized that this institution didn't have any of that. Barely had a learning management system that wasn't being fully optimized. And so now that I'm here in this place, one of my major goals is to making sure that we just not put a product out there, but we put one out that will be a blueprint, as you talked about earlier, a blueprint for other institutions or other consortiums or organizations, or even the standard for instructional design or instructional technology. So the goals are really, really high, but we're putting the work in to make it happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting way you put that, because like there is just one level of like encouraging or sort of advocating, which obviously is just, it's kind of maybe the lowest kind of level and can always be done and all that. But like what you're saying of being almost able to model the way through kind
Yeah.
of the network and the platform and everything, is that like it showcases like the values in a very tangible kind of explicit way, where it's just like, here's what's possible, here's what you can do, take inspiration from this and leverage this, theoretically, I guess, even like in addition to what specifically your institution is doing. Like you would have access to this, which is incredible, that
Right.
augments you, but then you can sort of like take that back to being like, okay, what is our sort of campus based, day to day sort of things that we're doing for our own sort of, campus community, then having that in addition to sort of the whole network and everything. And yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. And I guess even just like a, kind of a parallel that I'm thinking of too, in the sense of like that academic side, like all the great faculty and everything and course options that like students would be able to access. Like in a way, it's taking sort of a similar approach or even further approach as far as I'm aware, like all the like athletic conferences and stuff, like they bring
Oh yeah.
together people to do like, so it's like you just see again, like so many great outcomes come out of these sort of networked approaches. And just whenever and those are sort of peer institutions or big state schools and those sort of
Yeah.
things. It's like, how can we, take a similar approach for, HBCUs, where, a lot of these are, institutions that have been around for a very long time and
Yeah.
have, just so many great resources and yeah, just even, the history and everything. So, yeah, it's incredible. And I think once, because I think even just the premise, I think everybody it just sort of clicks and folks are really excited about it. But then it's like just you wait until the pilot is going and everything because it's like that's when it's just going to be like irrefutable and just an incredible
Yeah.
sort of moment and just really great to be able to see and kind of share out all the successes and stuff with folks. So yeah, it's an incredible moment, an incredible initiative. We're obviously super excited to be a part of it and everything. So um we yeah, I think we'll definitely have more kind of coverage or just sort of things that we'll be kind of boosting up about the project as it goes on. But we can wrap up though with the question that we ask all of our guests. I'll be curious to see how you kind of
Mhm.
take this question, whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
What does a connected campus look and or feel like to you?
Oh, great. That's a great question. A connected campus is a place where students, faculty, and staff can come together and find the resources that they need, whether it's, academic resources, financial resources, mental health resources, and other student success resources. Um, Even on a physical campus, if you're at a really big school, it's hard to find those all in one place. But a connected campus has that one-stop shop somewhere where students know where they can go and get the information they need. And what we're doing with HBCUV, we're taking that a step further with what we call the yard. And the yard on the HBCU campus is where people congregate, they mingle, they have meetings, they dance, they entertain each other. But then we also know that learning happens there happens there as well. You might be walking down the yard and then there's a faculty member there. You can ask them a question, whatever. So that's what it means. And that's what we want to bring to life with HBCUV, that connected campus, because I believe personally that that connection definitely breeds success.
Absolutely. And yeah, I mean, just, usually people take this on sort of like the digital side because it's a lot of what we talk about, but it is
Oh,
as much the physical space as it is, the
yes,
digital one and sort of taking inspiration from, yeah, just like the things that most people would be familiar with in the physical spaces and, trying to build that in the digital as well. Because, yeah,
yes,
it's just that idea of like, if you're building that community, you're talking with peers or faculty or staff or whatever, that relationship is part of getting someone in connection with resources or just having them feel like they're in sort of a supportive environment and all that. Like as much as sometimes I think at this point, a lot of institutions have so many great things to help students, but it like you have to go a little bit further to like have them feel comfortable, have them
yes,
feel, sort of safe and all those sort of things. And like relationships and community is definitely like a big part of that. And if, yeah, just the idea of any student at any, and again, even like you said, frankly, any institution in the country, because it could even be like,
Yes.
I know for University of Delaware, they have a very kind of solid like center for Black culture that I think just the
Hmm.
idea of like, man, if they were able to just kind of plug into this sort of thing and be able to sort of
Yes.
leverage that for, their really kind of tight knit community and everything, like that would be incredible. So it's just like, if any student can sort of feel that community, that camaraderie, that sort of kinship and everything, like wherever they are across the entire country, would be obviously a wonderful, warm, just like
Yes.
awesome outcome and impact for this. So certainly, again, I just appreciate you and your team just like digging in with this work and sticking with it for the long haul. And again, we're super excited to be a part of it and to help boost it up here on the Connected Campus podcast. So thank you so much for hanging out and sharing all that you did. And we'll have ways to connect with you, UNCF, and HBCUv in the show notes and description for this episode.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks for listening to the Connected Campus. Please leave a 5-star review for the show and share it so others can discover us. Make sure to also subscribe so you never miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Connected Campus.